All right, I'm showing 5:30, so let's get rolling here. This is the meeting of the Community Investment Program Task Force. It is Wednesday, November 29, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. As authorized by Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, this meeting may be convened into a closed executive session for the purpose of seeking confidential legal advice from the city attorney on any agenda item herein. The City of Rowlett reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign the regular session or called executive session or order of business at any time prior to adjournment. The process for public input: if you are not able to attend in person, you may complete the citizen input form on the city's website by 3:30 p.m. the day of the meeting. All forms will be forwarded to the task force prior to the start of the meeting. For in-person comments, registration forms or instructions are available inside City Hall. The committee may receive comments only on the agenda items as they were posted. Do we have any comments for tonight?
Any comments?
Okay. Anybody request to speak? Don't think so?
No.
Oh. So let's get to the agenda. Item 1, consider approval of the minutes from the October 23, 2023 meeting. I want to say thank you. They were very comprehensive and had a lot of great information in there.
Eric, you may want to look at the date.
I did, yeah. So I noticed if we approve tonight, amend it with the date being October 23, 2023. So if we've had a chance to review, any questions? A motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the noted correction.
I'd like to make an amendment. Item 3, first sentence. I think this is important to include this information. After using, put ranking criteria for the categorization of the groups, because that's the basis upon which Parks and Rec projects were chosen.
All right, so can you, one more time, Jeff? I'm sorry.
Okay. During the committee meeting, the task force made recommendations using ranking criteria for the categorization grouping. I believe in our presentation to the council, it will be an important criteria that you'll consider for the selection of each of the projects. Because the ranking criteria is important, I think, from a public point of view. To
So just-
recognize the basis for the selection of the projects.
So just one more readout. During the committee meeting, the task force made recommendations using the ranking criteria for categorized grouping with an exception for street.
Correct.
Second, was the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great, very good. Unanimous. Excuse me. Agenda item 2, discuss and formulate an outline for the presentation of projects to City Council. Staff did send out a link, and I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at it from the last presentation that was given on the last bond election. So we're going to kind of discuss with the current criteria, the outline for how we want that to look when we present that to council.
Thank you. Yes, so we did put together a slideshows. We have a slideshow that I'd like to show you tonight for your consideration. I'd be happy to send this out, and you guys can use them, manipulate them, reorganize them as you see fit. But these are for discussion items. This isn't really a presentation so much. Just to show you what is possible, what is likely. Excuse me. So, you know, as we know, the first part of this slideshow is just a summary of what the task force has come up with. There are the Parks and Recreation projects, and these are the Parks and Recreation projects as per the minutes, as per last last month's meeting. And then there was the public safety project. That one is the fire station renovations for 4.7 million. And then, of course, we have the CIP construction and design projects. They are listed here. And this is basically the summary of what the task force has arrived at. And then basically, we just took the slides that have been presented to the committee throughout the year and inserted them here to provide some detail as to these projects. So, you know, back up here, you have the list of Parks and Rec projects, and then this would be the detail. You've got the Wet Zone project with the Kids Kingdom, community park facility. And these can be edited to make them more brief if you like. Rowlett Community Center, Gym A, the parking lot improvements, kayak and dock launches, and finally the Shorewood park improvements. And then, of course, there is the detail of the fire stations. And this is a slide that basically is a accumulation of what the chief presented last. I don't believe it was last time, but it was the time before that. And then, of course, moving into some of the CIP projects, we've got a summary of the category for design streets. Yes, sir.
Would you please back up to the fire station, public safety? Thank you.
So this is a quick summary of the design streets. And then, of course, the residential streets. This is the entire list that we presented last time. You can include that, or you don't have to include it. Maybe a map might be simpler. But the slides are available, and these are the streets that we will be choosing from if the bond is passed. This is the collector street, which is Schrady Road, and the arterial street is the design of Cheezer Road. You know, it's maybe for simplicity's sake, these could be combined with one slide.
I think if you were going to present that to me and you had all those streets listed, and my street would be on there, I'd be thinking you're going to be doing it. Okay. So I'm not sure that we want to
I
list.
think maybe what we do is when we get to the streets part, the specific projects that we've earmarked, we do one slide. Bear Road, Interconnector, Schrady Road, stuff like that. And we can talk about why we earmark those separately. I think when we get to the balance, the $20 million balance, we should keep it generalized and it was based, you know, we're leaving up to staff and engineers to make that determination based on updated PCI ratings and where the most urgency is for that.
Yeah.
And just leave it at that, because I agree with you. If we list all of them up there, even though we say, you know, it's 70 million, we can't do them all.
And the other thing too is, the other thing too is somebody's gonna use the PCI data there to argue why their street's not being constructed. What we know there's a lot of a true indication of the streets.
Right.
Okay, so I skipped over the alley list. That's quite an extensive list as well.
Yes, sir.
But the cabinet, you know, I mean, we could just stick with a graphic
This one is
rather than the list. The list is here, but the graphic tells the story. And again, with the panel replacements, the quadrants that are been divided up. I'm not sure that that's even needed right there, but that may,
That's
Add
okay,
some
that's
context.
general enough, I think, to, so folks can see where the money is going without,
and how much is yet to be done. Of course, some typical sidewalk, connectivity, projects. And then, of course, the wall rehabilitation. And so I'll be happy to send them to you all, and we should formulate an outline tonight. We are here at your disposal to help you prepare this presentation, but really the presentation, I think, needs to come from the committee.
agree. A little bit of change in the order of presentation. I think we should first start out with what the mission is, what our mission is, what our goal was, what our capacity was determined to be as our starting point, our scope. And then a little bit, what I did like in the presentation from 21 was they reviewed the categorization, how things were evaluated.
I'm gonna, that was the other slideshow that I wanted to show. Let me close this, please. This is what was presented to council for the 21 fall election. And again, this can be distributed. They like you said, they had some generalizations here. Now, of course, in this particular proposal, they did break down the street projects. So there's an extensive list. One thing we did notice is they did spend some time on the ranking criteria, and I think we can certainly insert that. The categorizations, some of the categorizations were ranked, but not all of them, like the sidewalk connectivity, the wall repairs, I don't think were actually given up to ranking. But there's also the 6 park projects that were ranked. Let me show you what their format, what it looked like. That's kind of the format there. So we could
We'll come
formulate
up with a way to make it a little less eye-charty.
Yeah.
And maybe summarize that. Maybe we summarize the process and not necessarily display the ranking, but because you said there was some that we included just because there was a need without having to rank them. But go over the process and then how the ones that were chosen were chosen. Then the other thing,
I agree, Eric. The process should be explained, because there are some on the council who probably are not acquainted with it, and but not in the detail like that, just the result of the process.
yeah, we can have the data available, should council want to review that, in spreadsheets and stuff, and we have those already. But for presenting it, we can always provide the backup to that if it's requested.
Is there a staff report for this presentation? Is that something that needs to be considered? I was just curious if that would be a place to.
If I can offer, I think some of the comments that I've heard here, there are certain areas where the body has given specific information where you articulated, rank this, rank that. But there are others where you've grouped it. I think we'll line out the presentation, starting with your mission and some of the criteria or some of the constraints that were on the body, limited funds, some of the other things. Do you want us to talk about the methods that we considered? We did rank, but do you want us to go into all that? Is that too much minutia from the council? Do you want them to understand how you arrived here?
It's a lot of money.
Right? So if you want them to see, well, we had this ranking system, we can include that. I guess I want to be respectful of your time tonight. It's going to be hard to compile a full-body presentation between folks. And so we can take a stab at it and send it around and collect your inputs and modify it through several rounds of input to kind of get a consensus. So I think as I'm listening, it's kind of going to be helpful if you could tell us the elements that you think would be valuable to include. Let us go back and try to include those things and then send it around to you for review. What do you think of that?
That's my preference.
Well, I think that's what Eric was saying, is we just want to go ahead and give them a little bit of background as far as how much we're looking at, how we qualified it, and then this is what the result was.
I mean, we can say that a method, a ranking method was used without having to put out all the detail behind it. If you recall earlier too, when we were breaking things down into categories, we realized there was a significant portion of it that was going to have to be allocated for streets and street infrastructure projects. So we had said, we are going to take this much money and recommend that be allocated for public safety and for parks. So besides the ranking, the other thing that we did was said, okay, it was a set amount for public safety, 4.7 million. And I think, what did we say? We were going to do 25 for public safety and parks, approximately a third. So then from the ranking of the parks, we went down the list to see what we could get within that 21. The street project, the ones that were earmarked specifically was because their urgency and the need for it. Then with the balance being, we will let staff decide where that additional balance is spent outside of those earmarked projects. So just to talk to how we kind of arrived at that without necessarily doing this is fine.
What other elements?
If I may, I don't disagree with generalizing as we discussed, but how will we convey the prioritization that we did with the survey, particularly on the streets, to the council and the staff? Well, how will that be included if it's not presented in this format? We spent a lot of time prioritizing those streets. How is that information going to be?
But we did, or not.
We did.
We just said, here's X amount of dollars for streets, and we need the professionals to sit down and use the information that they've been given
That's what I'm saying.
to
Right.
determine.
So there were specific ones that were earmarked. We had said the Liberty Grove connector, the
Yeah,
White
it's,
box,
if you look at the specific, on the first page for streets, it has the specific projects, then it goes to the next part. Or if you go to the last page, on 5, then it says there's $20 million allocated to
Right.
street and alley projects. And then there could be some brief, dialogue and with the council on why did we go down that road? And
Right. And that's kind of this slide here is what we're seeing. That's a consolidation of the first page basically and the last page, which is allocates that 20 million. I prefer define the scope, the strategy we used, how we allocated what dollar amounts we were going to earmark, and then go through the projects. The only other change that I see is as we get to each thing, like we get to parks, and then we have all the material about what's included in that at the end, the details. I would do parks, here's the detail.
Sure.
These slides here.
Yeah.
This is what you're talking about.
Yes, and some of those we can put, that's a lot of words
Yeah.
when you're presenting. A lot of those we can just move to the notes section of the presentation.
Okay.
And they can be talking points should the questions come on.
I do think it is important that we do describe the process somewhat of how we rank it. Because really, for me, the audience is not only necessarily council, it's somebody who just moved in this town and they want to understand, you know, oh, maybe I'm interested in doing something, or I think it is, we do need to explain that process briefly for sure, because people do need to understand how did we make these decisions.
I want to make sure I understand. So part of it is you kind of combine two things. You've earmarked certain roads, right? You will be able to talk about that a little bit better than we can.
Right.
We went through this ranking exercise, to your points, but the group has ultimately said, we're going to toss it out to some degree, give a set amount of money, and ultimately then in the future, the city is going to come back, staff is going to come back with X information. A component of that could very well be your rankings, because we know the condition of the roads could change by the time we get there. Present that to the city council, who will ultimately make the final decision as to the prioritization of roads to be funded at that time. And so the exercise that you went through, while I don't want to say it's not going to be used, it won't be used within the context of this. I want to make sure we're clear, is that's what's happened here, right? We're not presenting a ranking to the city council for
Correct.
roads.
Correct.
So,
Streets, roads.
and so when we talk, I don't want to conflate these things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're just saying streets and alleys are another project, one of the projects.
Absolutely, but then I'm hearing discussions about give the rankings and talk about how we rank them, but you didn't rank them any. Ultimately, you didn't.
Well-
We're not putting forth a ranking.
I think when we talk about the rankings, we have to isolate that to parks,
Sure.
and the public safety, and to an extent, the projects that we earmarked under streets.
Absolutely. I just want to make sure we're not expected to include the entirety of your rankings, because I'm hearing different things.
No.
Because you've already covered that you want to talk about the things that you've already ranked, that we're putting forth, that are expressly ranked.
Correct.
Then there's this whole other ranking system you did that's not going to be used.
Right.
Okay.
And if anybody were to ask, why did we not do a ranking on that additional 20 million? I would be very straightforward and say, there is data that still needs to be evaluated to do that. And that will be,
And I'll also provide a summary to the council about that as well, and how the CIPT and the CIPTF, attempted to come up with a good ranking system and ran into the issues along the way with our data and flawed data that we had.
and not just that, but they, staff, you guys are the experts at this, the engineers and the project managers are the experts. So when they go out to bid on these projects, if they can get, better pricing because they're grouping things together, scale, whatever, I think,
And that doesn't happen in a vacuum either. There's, it has to
Exactly.
go right back forward.
I understand. But what I'm saying is I'm comfortable with that. I am comfortable, I'm not going to speak for staff making that decision.
Eric, do you recall, I wasn't on the 2021 meeting, but you recall when you presented, were there material questions that came from council that the presentation didn't really address, that we want to make sure we address?
You have to talk to Jeff, Mr. Sheldon about that. I wasn't on the 2021.
Oh, okay.
In response to the ranking, with regard to streets and alleys, I think the phrase here telegraphs it very well. That the projects will be based upon PCI ranking and evaluations. If you want to qualify evaluations in some way with regard to future or engineering evaluations or some other criteria, that would be the case. Because the earlier streets and alleys category, I think should be just called design. The design category fits within the streets and alley category because it was initially confirmed by the task force that these items were essential to the city. that range from the signal cabinet installation, panel replacements, and the construction fund primarily for existing development.
Yes.
That's, for example, a Toller Business Park and the County Air Estates, as well as the Chisa Road Design, although it doesn't say whether it's north or south. South has already been taken care of, because I presume that's from Miller to Liberty Grove. You think that's
It's from Miller
Miller
to 66.
66? Good. The only question I would have in mind, looking forward to the idea of whether or not you're going to have 3 propositions, or you're going to have more. Under the 3, you would have Parks and Rec, and Public Safety, and Streets and Alleys. Now, is this design category going to fit within?
There's not necessarily design either, there's construction in there too.
For the street,
Continued construction, yes. Mhm.
for the, so if you look, do the slide here, the categories, there is a category for projects that have been in design and we need construction funding for those. Then Chisa Road is specifically a design project. Schrady is a design and construction project that we're seeking funding for. But the streets and alleys, that's reconstruction, so that too is gonna be design and construction.
I think we won't need a recommendation from CIPTF on how we're gonna
Proposition.
do proposition, the propositions. And I think we can come to that determination
Okay.
as a group. And I typically, if we're gonna follow precedent, it is how you stated it, it's the streets and alleys, the infrastructure, you have the parks and recreation, you have public safety. That's typically how it's grouped.
It's typically set out as 3 different.
Yeah, almost all the time, 3 propositions.
And the funding in this case is very similar to 2018, where you do have streets and alleys, parks and rec, and public safety. And streets and alleys in that case, I mean, the total funding was 59.9 instead of 60 million.
Right.
And approximately the same allocation with the 3 propositions. And they all passed at that time.
Getting back to what Brian had asked, do you recall anything, Jeff, based on
No, I don't.
the,
Sorry.
The mayor was on the city council at that time. Do you remember when did other issues like, oh, how this ranking criteria, how things.
Or why this,
Anything we need to bake into ours to
So,
make it more clear?
yeah, so from what I recall from the previous, I was here for the 2018 and the 2021. We didn't get into the specific neighborhood street projects. It was more of the higher level, basically, the fire station, whether that was gonna happen. It was more of the major roads, if there were any. The last 2021 didn't have major roads, so we didn't really go deep dive into how these specific streets were ranked. And with the understanding of why we're not ranking, or CIPTF didn't rank, I think the council will, I don't want to speak for council, but I'm sure that with the reasoning, they'll understand it and support it. So.
and the reality is when the bond proposals get written, they do not list out specific projects. So this serves more as a roadmap for the funding and how the funding should be utilized should the bonds be approved. They do not specifically say for streets, this will be for signal cabinet installation, things like that. It just says for
Right.
streets.
It's up to the voters to go out to the bond website and actually look at what the details of the propositions are.
And the city has been very good, I think, as projects from bonds are being done, of saying, look, this was from your 2021 bond, this is your 2021 bond money at work. And that's nice to see. I think as a citizen, it's just nice to see. And this isn't part of what we do as the CIPTF, but I think the city should continue always to, hey, and even put it out there, we're about to start this project.
Well, I even think when we're doing CIP or their bonded projects, we have those signs that say, you know, funded by, you know, 2021 bond or funded by the 2024 bond.
But even the Friday at 5, if we could say, hey, starting this week.
Absolutely.
You know.
All right.
We'll definitely promote the activities.
What was your question?
I just said, you know, the signs that say, you know, your bond dollars at work.
Yeah.
Those are all,
We used to do that, we don't do it anymore.
Yeah. we need to.
We were putting the bond dollars into the payment.
I think
Yeah, I'll find out fine.
very probably we touched upon the financial aspect of this. It is important to incorporate the information about no tax increase. The idea
Oh, the
for
63.
anybody wanting to vote for bonds or 3 or 4 propositions, whatever they may be, it's the idea that their citizens will not experience a tax increase as a consequence. Should that be part of the presentation?
No, because we're gonna, that, in terms of the educational part of the bond
Okay.
package, that will come a little closer to
Mm.
having to issue the, what is it, the call for the election.
Yes. Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that y'all aren't gonna play some role, I don't know, we haven't discussed it yet, but in terms of the education.
So,
If I may, I'd like to summarize what I've taken from this conversation. Conversation, you know, tends to go back and forth, but I think I hit the high notes here. The mission, and then the capacity and the scope, the process and strategy that was used to get to where we are, criteria and constraints. And then, of course, to discuss that what was decided on in terms of the amounts, that there was a third dedicated to public safety and parks, and 2/3 to the streets and CIP projects. And a little explanation on how the CIP projects, there were certain CIP projects that were earmarked with certain dollar amounts, and then the remainder is allocated to the streets. That is my outline.
You might want to put something in about bringing things to code.
For the public safety?
Yeah.
Okay. That could be in part in the
It's part of the
detail.
education.
I was gonna say people piece, because some of that, it's
But you've kicked some things down. the
yeah,
road,
I mean, it's
but
part of it, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're gonna.
It's not necessarily code that you kick down the street, it's your maintenance that you kick down the street. So there's a lot of deferred maintenance.
Semantics.
Resulting in budget.
If we're gonna spend it now, we ain't got it, period.
any other comments for him? My request would be, once this is there, if it can be somewhere that's accessible in box.
Yeah.
Please put out whatever your initial draft is, put it out as a PDF version and as a PowerPoint version. And my request to the committee would be download the PowerPoint version, don't edit it there. And then we can bring all our changes or things that we'd like to recommend together and put it back together. But let's keep the source version intact.
So let me, from our standpoint, my understanding, we're gonna compile this for you,
Yes.
and I think it may be easier, you tell me otherwise. If you've got a live document that's, you know, for the sake of not wanting to violate someone otherwise, he can send it out to the group, BCC you. Would you just send him your suggested changes?
That's fine.
That may be easier than going through the other machinations that could go into that.
And just do it as a PDF then. If we're just gonna send back requested changes, we can just send it back in text as an email.
So how's he supposed to figure out which ones he should?
Well, that's gonna be part of the dialogue that will happen.
Right.
Ultimately, who's making the presentation?
Right.
And that ultimately, the chair presents.
Pressure. Let's see. Why'd you do it this way? Why'd you do that way?
Anything else on this? All right, well, it could be a short meeting tonight, and I'm sure everybody will be very sad about that.
Let's talk about timing.
Yes,
And, you know, I think we need to get something, I think you're gonna have more than just one round of,
right,
more than one iteration. But I do need to know if there's gonna be a December.
right, so so that's something that was discussed in a phone call earlier. We present to city council in January. So we are going to at least need an opportunity to review the final. That's gonna be presented to them. So I think we need to have a December meeting.
Yes.
Do we know which council meeting in January this will be presented out?
What is your first work session in
It will be.
Make it a late
You're not keeping
one,
it
so we
first and
have
second,
to choose.
then we're talking these people.
Do it first.
First meeting, there's the first meeting in
Right,
December.
probably either
That's
night.
December.
Yeah, no,
Not January.
January. Here's the calendar. So. So the first Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, right?
Mhm.
So we're presumptively it's like a week.
That's,
On the second.
Yeah, so
on what?
Second.
first and second, so
New
presumptively.
Year's?
Yeah, 8, 9.
That's what I thought, okay.
The 8th.
So the 8th, Monday.
So do we want to do the same thing we did with the rate? If you're gonna do 2 weeks, gather that data, and then that way we can possibly get 2 rounds in between now and the next, the December meeting.
That's what they wanted to know, we were
Well-
presenting,
If staff can get the presentation out to us,
so they know.
and we can just send our recommended changes in. When we do that, we're gonna have to copy each other so that we're not,
Or,
so,
I mean, just the deduction, I mean, there's a commonality, obviously, that's gonna be a change.
so the question is, do we have, will the holiday schedule and our schedule facilitate 2 meetings between now and the 8th?
Whoa, why?
No, that's what,
But
I think just
Oh,
one.
no, I mean,
Well,
like,
If I'm, but you have some point.
That was, yeah.
Do we even need another meeting?
If we're gonna do this online, iterations online, and final, you know, get a good draft together, is there a need to bring this?
It really ultimately is your choice.
Yes, it is.
So,
are you able to, Box, create a folder where we upload our red lines? Would that consider
we can
be
do that.
a meeting?
You could.
That way,
Well,
That could be.
so the quorum,
right,
if you
that's what I
guys just
thought.
wanna let everyone see what you're saying, that's a quorum question. That's why I'm saying send it to Jeff. He can compile it, because ultimately, if I could say, Mr. Chairman, this is your presentation.
right,
You don't have to have another meeting for the committee, but if you want to, we'll schedule it and we'll compile. You just tell us what you want to do. In terms of getting the information, the easiest, cleanest way and safest, send it to Jeff. He'll compile it, the schedule of which will work back from whatever the chairman says, and work back from there.
if we each redline our own copy, I know it becomes a nightmare to then try to merge them, and then,
My thought
Get
honestly is he was
consensus on
gonna
it.
send those red lines to you, because
Right.
you were gonna make the decision about what stays and what goes.
Or,
And then if you want us to send that back out, we will gladly do so as many iterations as you want us to.
or could
But we don't make the decision about what stays and what goes.
we individually send that to you and then you compile those and
It's a
send
walking
it back?
form at that point.
Well, individually, so if
I
if
wouldn't
staff
recommend
send it, staff.
You're daisy
send it out?
chaining at that point.
I would just send them all to staff, and they can put them into a single list, and we can just
Yeah.
review the list. That can then go back out to everybody,
Good.
and we could take a couple passes at it. That would remove the need for a meeting in December, but that means we would have to go right into.
There won't be a voting mechanism, so he can, he can compile all of this and send it all back to you. But there's no real voting mechanism without breaking the law necessarily.
Right.
So you're gonna have to make some decisions about what stays and what goes, and we send it out and get their feedback and kind of give it to you.
I would feel more comfortable. I mean, even if it's just a final review of the presentation. If we're, and does Wednesday generally work for everybody?
It's the 13th.
My only request would be, depending on how quickly you can get a version out to us, we need to set a deadline for all our requests for edits to go back in. Save time.
So I think there's some value in, because I think most of us will just kind of wordsmith things, this, that, and the other. But these key scope document discussions, the key ranking, is that something you will take on as a sole person to draft? Because you don't want 10 people doing full write-ups of.
When we get this first draft out, I can make those corrections, or those edits or additions, and get those back in, and then have that go back out again. Yeah, so that's fine, but I do think sometime before we present, we as a group
All
to
right.
review and make
I think we can get you something, by the end of the 7th.
So can that document not be in an app that's a collaborative
So then we're
editing
we're
document where everyone can add their comments? I mean, that's.
No, because
And
Eric's
writing
gonna be the control in this case.
Right, but I'm saying, you know, to be able to at least comment on it and
You
then
could be in
all scroll
violation
down
of
through
TOMA
there.
at that.
Yeah,
So-
that's true.
That's what I keep saying, that's what I'm trying to prevent.
Right, I gotcha.
We'll compile them for, I know it would be efficient if we could, trust me.
I gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we do that.
Toma makes things a lot less efficient around here, so we just gotta go.
Well, but transparent, so.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so since for whatever reason, I cannot pull up my calendar.
Can you,
Well, I have
he's got one
I
up.
have it right
He's got
here.
one up.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, okay. So if you can get that to us by the 7th, if we're talking about when does council meet? In December.
Oh, in December.
These 2 days.
Oh, no, gosh.
No, we're
It's
not
not
gonna
gonna council
present
until
until January, but I think he doesn't want to conflict.
Well, whether we're looking at a Monday or a Wednesday.
Right.
How long, Jeff, would it take you to compile all of our input?
And get it back out to us.
Yeah.
Can I say this? You need to tell us what you want to do, and our job is to do it.
Do it.
So you need to kind of set a realistic timetable, and we will hit the mark.
So if you can get the initial one out by the 7th, and can we get our revisions back in by the 13th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then
We can have it actually by the
have a
20th.
meeting.
Yeah.
The 20th? Would that work?
Easily.
Back by the 13th.
Okay.
And then meeting on the 20th?
Yes,
This meeting.
yes.
Not this one, but the next one.
Ah.
You know what I meant.
I mean, we understand with the timing and stuff,
So,
if there's gonna be a
there's another-
conflict, as long as we have a quorum.
I have another commission.
Because I would
What you
expect-
could do is if you had comments you wanted to do or additional things, just send them to Jeff and we can discuss them
I would
So
expect.
who meets in here then?
Our DEIC. Yeah, the third meeting.
When is it?
The 20th.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll have them move it.
Oh,
We can go in another room.
The 21st?
You won't be able to.
The 20th.
I know, but does the 21st work?
Oh, yeah, I don't care.
21st works.
Works great for me. Nice to know.
Right.
Yeah.
get it up and then it's the month day to look at it.
I don't either,
So Thursday, the 21st. Merry Christmas, y'all.
How,
Well, submitted.
Fine.
okay, so draft by the 7th, revisions by the committee, or the task force by the 13th, and then the meeting on the 21st. Good.
We'll have the next draft now on the 20th, the day before, so that you can look at it.
And then present to council on the 8th.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other business? All right, let's call it a day. 6:13. 15.